The microfilm reader hummed like an old refrigerator, and the page in front of me said I had been dead for 37 years. I read the name 3 times before my hands understood what my eyes had already seen. Daniel Wren Halloway, born March 4, 1985, died July 22, 1987, at St. Andrew's Memorial in Beckham County, Ohio, survived by his mother, Ellen Halloway, and his father, Peter Halloway. A short paragraph, 91 words. The kind of obituary a small-town paper prints when a family can't afford anything longer, or when the family is too broken to write more. My name is Daniel Wren Halloway. I was born March 4, 1985. My mother's name is Ellen. My father's name was Peter, and he died in 2011 of a stroke in a Cracker Barrel parking lot outside Zanesville. I am 39 years old, and I have never in my life been to Beckham County. I sat there with my palm on the reader's glass, and I could feel the heat of the bulb underneath the film, and I remember thinking that the only sound in the whole basement of that library was my own breathing, and it was going fast. The librarian's name was Marla. She was 50-something, grey at the temples, and she wore a cardigan the colour of a wet leaf. She'd let me into the microfilm room 40 minutes earlier, because I'd told her I was doing research for a book about small-town journalism in the 80s. That was a lie. I was there because 2 weeks earlier, cleaning out my mother's storage unit, I'd found a manila envelope labelled Danny, keep in her handwriting. Inside was a folded piece of newsprint, the Beckham County Register, July 24, 1987, page 6, a death notice with my name on it. I had told myself, driving down that morning, that it was a coincidence. Another Daniel Halloway, a cousin maybe, a boy who shared my name and my birthday by some tidy accident. Ohio is full of Halloways. My father used to joke that you couldn't throw a rock in Muskingum County without hitting one. But the birthday was mine, and the parents were mine, and my mother had saved the clipping in her own handwriting, with my nickname on the envelope, and she had never, in 39 years, said a single word about it. I pressed the print button on the microfilm reader. It coughed out a warm grey page. I folded it into quarters and put it in my jacket pocket next to the original clipping, and then I sat in that chair for a long time, doing nothing, listening to the bulb tick. Marla knocked on the door before she opened it. That was the kind of woman she was. "You okay in here, honey? You've been quiet a while." "I'm fine," I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to somebody at the bottom of a well. "Marla, can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "Beckham County, St. Andrew's Memorial. Is that hospital still open?" She thought about it. "St. Andrew's closed in, 96. 97? They tore most of it down. The rehab wing's a storage facility now." "Why?" "Records. I need records from 87. Her face changed. "Not much. Just a little tightening at the corner of the mouth." "Death records?" "Yes. County clerk's office. 2nd floor of the courthouse. But they only keep public files. If it's a medical thing, you'd need the family to sign." "It is family." "Then it should be easy," she said. And then, after a second, "You sure you're okay? You look a little peaky." I laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. I found something I wasn't expecting. "Well," she said, "that's what basements are for." Then, the courthouse in Beckham County is the kind of building that looks embarrassed to still exist. Sandstone, 4 stories. A clock in the tower that had stopped at 4:12 sometime during the Reagan administration. The woman behind the county clerk's desk was named Doreen, according to her nameplate, and Doreen was eating a Little Debbie oatmeal cream pie when I walked in. "Help you? I need a copy of a death certificate. 1987. Halloway, Daniel Wren." She wiped her fingers on a napkin, one at a time, and typed the name into her computer with the deliberate slowness of a woman who had been asked to learn 3 different software systems in 20 years and was tired of it. "Relation? Son," I said, and then, because I heard how that sounded, "I mean, the deceased was my brother." "Same name, family tradition." She nodded like that made all the sense in the world. In this part of Ohio, it probably did. July 22nd, 1987. "Yep, cause of death, drowning. Certificate signed by a Dr. Lehman." She turned the monitor toward me. It was a scanned copy of a document. The names, the dates, the seal of the state of Ohio. Cause of death, accidental drowning. Location, private residence. Signature of certifying physician, Robert Lehman, MD. Can I get a copy? $2. I paid in cash. She printed it out on a laser printer that sounded like it was chewing gravel. As she handed it to me, she said, "You want the burial too?" The what? The burial record, where the body was interred. We track that separately. It's another $2. Yes, please. She typed again, frowned, typed again. Huh. What? There's no burial on file. That's unusual. Cremation? Doesn't say. Says here the body was released to the family, Peter and Ellen Halloway, but no funeral home receipt, no interment, no cremation certificate, nothing. She looked up at me. That happens sometimes with private services, but it's supposed to be recorded. So where did the body go? Honey, I don't know. That's not something the county tracks after release. You'd have to ask your parents. I walked out of the courthouse with a death certificate for a boy who had my name, my birthday, and my parents, and no grave. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot for 40 minutes before I called my mother. She answered on the third ring. She was in her kitchen, in Toledo, 3 hours north. I could hear the radio playing NPR in the background. She likes Terry Gross. She has since the 80s. Danny. Mum, you sound funny. Where are you? Beckham County. There was a pause, not a long one, but it was there. She's my mother, and I've known her for 39 years, and I heard the pause. Okay, she said, carefully. Mum, I found something in the storage unit. A newspaper clipping. The pause was longer this time. Mum, come home, Danny. Mum, why did the Beckham County Register print an obituary for me in 1987? Come home, please. I don't want to do this on the phone. Was there another Danny? Come home. She hung up. I sat there staring at the phone. My mother has hung up on me exactly twice in my life. Once when I told her I was dropping out of the University of Michigan, and once when I told her I was going to marry Sarah, whom she liked but did not trust. Both times she called back within an hour. This time she did not. Ooh, I did not go home. I want to say that I did, that I got in the car, and I drove to Toledo, and I sat in her kitchen, and I let her explain, and everything after that was neat and clean. But I didn't. Because the pause on the phone had told me something my mother didn't want to say out loud, and I knew that if I drove to Toledo she would say it in the way that she had already decided to say it, and I wanted to know it first. I drove instead to St. Andrew's Memorial, or what was left of it. The main building was gone. Just a slab of foundation and a lot of weeds. The rehab wing, the part Marla had told me was a storage facility, was still standing on the east side of the lot. It was a 2-story red brick building, with plywood over most of the windows. A hand-painted sign on the side said, Beckham Self-Storage, and gave a phone number. I called the number. A man named Wallace answered. I told him I was looking for medical records from the old hospital. He laughed at me. Buddy, all that stuff got hauled off in '96. State took some, insurance took some, the rest went in a dumpster. There ain't a paper in this building older than my second wife. Is there anyone who worked there? Anyone I could talk to? Sure, there's plenty. Try Ruth Delano. She was a nurse there 30 years. She's over at the Willowbrook now. Willowbrook? Assisted living. Off Route 40. Tell her Wallace sent you, and she'll spit at you, but she'll talk. Ruth Delano was 81 years old, and she was smoking a cigarette on the back patio of the Willowbrook when I found her. She was not supposed to be smoking. There was a sign 6 feet from her chair that said no smoking. She was, as far as I could tell, waiting for someone to tell her to stop. I did not tell her to stop. I sat down in the chair next to hers and told her Wallace had sent me. She did not spit at me. She looked at me for a long time, from under a set of eyebrows that had probably terrified interns for 40 years, and then she said, "You look like Peter Halloway." I felt the concrete of the patio drop away under my chair. "You knew my father. I knew both your parents." She took a slow drag of the cigarette. You must be the second one. I could not speak for a second. When I found my voice, it came out thin. The second one. The second Danny. She squinted at me. How old are you? 39. She nodded. Once. Like this confirmed something she had suspected. Then they had you right away. That must have been hard on your mother, to try again that fast. Mrs. Delano, I said, and my voice was working now, but not much. I need you to tell me what happened to the first one. She looked out at the parking lot. There was a maple tree, half dead, and a couple of Buicks, and a sky that had gone the color of dishwater. Your father brought him in on a Tuesday night, she said. July. It was hot that summer. Your daddy was carrying him wrapped in a towel, and he was screaming. Your daddy, I mean, not the baby. The baby wasn't doing anything. He was blue. Your mother came in about 10 minutes later. Somebody else drove her. I don't remember who. Drowning, I said. The certificate said drowning. That's what Bob Lehman put on the certificate. She said it flat. She said it in a way that made me hear the words underneath the words. But, she looked at me, really looked, and then she said, Son, are you sure you want to be here? Yes. You're sure? Yes. Then you should know that in July of 1987, that baby did not drown. That baby had bruises on him, older than the water in his lungs. Bob Lehman signed that certificate because your father asked him to, and because the sheriff at the time was your daddy's cousin, and because your mother would not stop crying long enough to say a word against anybody. The patio was very quiet. Somewhere inside the Willowbrook, someone was playing a game show on a television turned up too loud. That's what I remember, Ruth said. You asked. I told you. Now you can decide if you want to keep pulling on this string, or if you want to go home to your mother and let her tell it the way she needs to tell it. I did not answer her. I could not. She put out her cigarette on the arm of her chair. There's one more thing, she said. What? When they brought that baby in, your father had a black eye, and your mother had a broken wrist, and nobody, in any of the paperwork, ever explained either one. I drove back to my motel that night with the windows down, because I could not stand the sound of my own thoughts inside the car. The motel was a sundowner inn off Route 40, 2 stories of vinyl siding and 1 flickering vacancy sign, and my room smelled like cigarettes and the ghost of 100 pool chemicals. I sat on the bed, and I put the 2 pieces of paper next to each other, the obituary, the death certificate. And then I took out a 3rd piece of paper, which I had been carrying since Toledo, and which I had not yet looked at closely. It was my birth certificate, my own. Daniel Wren Halloway, born March 4th, 1985, Mercy General Hospital, Toledo, Ohio. Weight 7 pounds 4 ounces. Mother, Ellen Marie Halloway. Father, Peter James Halloway. I read it 3 times. I was looking for something wrong, something to prove Ruth Delano was mistaken, some little error I could hold on to. And then I saw it. Not an error. Something else. At the bottom of the certificate, in the space marked Certifying Physician, was a signature. Neat. Angular. The letters cramped together. Robert Lehman, M.D. The same doctor who, 2 years and 4 months later, would sign a death certificate in Beckham County for a boy with the same name. I looked at the 2 signatures side by side. Same slant. Same loop on the L. Same doctor. Toledo is 3 hours from Beckham County. Doctors do not, as a general rule, deliver a baby in one hospital and then certify the same baby's death in another hospital in a different county 2 years later, unless he knew the family, unless the family had a reason to keep going back to him. I turned off the lamp. The motel room went dark except for the sign outside, blinking pink and pink and pink through the curtain. I lay on top of the covers with my shoes still on, and I stared at the ceiling, and I tried to think about the fact that there had been a first Danny, a brother I had never known about, a brother my parents had buried, somewhere somehow, and then replaced with me, less than 2 years later, with the same name. I tried to feel sad about him, about the first Danny. I could not, quite. He was still an abstraction, a newspaper column, a signature, a woman in a cardigan telling me the story of a Tuesday in July. What I felt instead was a sick, cold understanding that my mother had known this my whole life, and had never told me, and had saved a clipping in an envelope with my nickname on it, and had put that envelope in a storage unit, where she had to know I would eventually find it. She hadn't hidden it. She had left it for me. I fell asleep around 3 in the morning. I dreamed of water. I dreamed of a bathtub, and a small hand, and a man's voice saying something I could not make out. When I woke up, the pink sign was off, and the sun was coming in grey, and my phone had 11 missed calls from my mother. I did not call her back. Not yet. Instead, I called my sister. I have a sister. Her name is Claire. She is 4 years younger than me, which means she was born in 1989, which means she was born 2 years after the first Danny died. She lives in Columbus. She teaches middle school art. She is married to a man named Ben who works for the state, and who is kind in the specific way that state employees can sometimes be, which is to say, he is unfailingly polite and slightly bored. She is the only other person in the world who has the same mother and the same father as I do. She picked up on the second ring. Danny. Mum's been calling me. What is going on? Claire. What? Did you know we had a brother? Silence. I waited. Claire, where are you? She said, and her voice was different. Lower. Careful. Beckham County. Oh, Danny, you knew. I didn't know. Not the way you're saying. Then how did you know? I found a picture, she said. When I was 15, in Mum's dresser, there was a picture of a baby, and I thought it was you, and I asked Mum about it, and she said it was you, and then a week later the picture was gone, and I never saw it again, and I never said anything, because of how she looked when I asked. How did she look? Claire took a long time to answer. Like she was going to be sick, she said, like I had walked in on something. I closed my eyes. Claire, there's a death certificate. In 1987, for a Daniel Wren Halloway, same birthday as mine, same parents. He drowned, except a nurse in the hospital that night says he didn't drown, he was hurt, and Dad's cousin was the sheriff, and the doctor signed off on it. The line was so quiet I could hear the hum of her refrigerator. Danny, she said, come home. Everybody keeps saying that, because whatever you're about to find out, whatever you already found out, you shouldn't be alone in a motel when you finish finding it out. Please, come to Columbus. I'll call Mum. We'll do this together. I looked at the 2 pieces of paper on the nightstand. The obituary, the death certificate. Claire. Yeah, there's something else. What? I looked up Robert Lehman, the doctor, last night, on my laptop, and he died in 1984, Claire, a year before I was born. He died a full year before he supposedly delivered me at Mercy General, and 3 years before he supposedly signed a death certificate for a boy with my name. Claire made a small sound, not a word, just a sound. How is that possible? She said. I did not answer her, because I did not know, but I knew who might. I knew who had kept the clipping in an envelope with my nickname on it, and who had paused on the phone, and who had told me to come home. I told Claire I would call her back. I hung up. I got in the car, but I did not drive to Toledo. I drove, instead, to a small brick building on the west side of Beckham County, because in the phone book at the motel, under the listing for cemeteries and funeral services, there had been exactly one funeral home that was operating in July of 1987. Its name was Lehman & Sons. Lehman & Sons Funeral Home sat on a corner lot between a boarded-up feed store and a Dollar General, and it looked exactly like a funeral home in a town like Beckham County was supposed to look. 2 stories of white clapboard, black shutters, a wraparound porch, a small sign in gold letters. The gravel driveway had been raked recently. Somebody still cared about the impression. I sat in my car across the street for 10 minutes before I went in. I was watching for something, and I did not know what. A shadow in a window, a face, some small confirmation that I was in the right place. What I got instead was a maroon Buick that pulled into the driveway, and a man in his 60s who got out, unlocked the side door, and went inside without noticing me at all. I gave him another 5 minutes. Then I crossed the street. The bell above the front door made a soft, expensive sound. The lobby smelled like carnations and pledge. A woman's voice from a back office called, "Be right with you." I did not sit. I looked at the wall. There were photographs behind the reception desk, small framed portraits of the family, 4 generations of Leymans in dark suits. The oldest photograph was labeled Robert J. Lehman, founder, 1927. The next one down was labeled Robert M. Lehman, and there was no date. He was a thin-faced man with a mustache and the tired eyes of someone who had spent his life around grief. Under his photograph, in smaller letters, was 1938 to 1984. Died 1984, just like the internet had said. I was still looking at the photograph when the woman came out of the back office. She was maybe 50, blonde going to silver, wearing a black blazer and reading glasses on a chain. "Sorry about that. Can I help you? I'm looking for records. From July 1987. Her face did the small professional smoothing that funeral directors' faces do. "A family member. A brother. Daniel Halloway." She held my eyes for just a second too long. Then she said, "Let me check the book." She went behind the desk and pulled a large leather-bound ledger off a shelf, not a computer file. A book. The spine said 1987. She opened it to July and ran her finger down the page, and her finger stopped and stayed there. Halloway, Daniel Wren, received July 22, released July 23. Released to whom? She looked up at me. "To the family," it says. "To Peter Halloway." That's unusual, but not unheard of. Sometimes families take the remains for a private burial, especially for a child. There's no cremation record, no burial, nothing at the county. That would be a matter for the family, not for us. Was there a service? She looked at the ledger again. Then she flipped forward 2 pages and back 1. Her finger moved slower. "No service is recorded." "Nothing? No viewing? Nothing?" "Nothing." "Ma'am," I said, and I could hear how tight my voice was getting. "You kept a 2-year-old for 1 night and then handed his body to his father in a, what, a box? A bag? And nobody wrote down where he went?" She closed the ledger. "Sir, I understand this is emotional, but I was not here in 1987. My father-in-law ran this business then, and he passed in 2006, and I cannot answer for what he did or did not write down. What I can tell you is that the ledger says what it says. If there was more, it was not committed to paper." I stood there. I could hear the ticking of a clock somewhere in the back. "Was your father-in-law close with Robert Lehman, the doctor?" The smoothing came back onto her face, slower this time. "They were cousins," she said. I had not, until that moment, understood how small this county actually was. "Ma'am, one more question. The doctor, Robert M. Lehman, the one in the photograph. He died in 1984, correct?" "Yes." "Then who was the Robert Lehman who signed a death certificate here in 1987? She looked at me for a very long time. "Sir," she said, finally, "I think you should go." I did not go. I left the building, but I did not leave the property. I walked around the side of the funeral home to the back parking lot, where the maroon Buick was parked next to a hearse and a small grey sedan. I stood there in the gravel, and I looked up at the second-floor windows, and I tried to think. There is a moment in every investigation, I think, where you realize the person you are talking to is not going to tell you the truth, and you have to decide whether that means the truth is unavailable or whether it means it is very close. I decided it was very close. I walked back around to the front. I did not go in. I sat on the porch swing, because the porch swing was there, and I took out my phone, and I called Claire. "Danny, I need you to do something for me. From your computer. Danny, Mom called me 3 times this morning. She's crying. I need you to look up something. Ohio Board of Medicine. Robert Lehman. See if there's a license number. See if there was more than one. Danny." "Claire, please." She was quiet. Then I heard the sound of a laptop opening. "Spell the last name." "Lehman. I heard her typing. There's a Robert M. Lehman. Licensed 1963. License lapsed 1984. Marked deceased. Anyone else? There's a Robert P. Lehman. Licensed 1971. Ohio license. Still active. No, wait. Retired 2009. Robert P. Lehman. Yeah. Where did he practice? Says Beckham County General from 71 to 96. Then Toledo. Mercy General. From 96 to 2009. I closed my eyes. There had been two of them. Cousins, probably. Same first name. Same profession. Same county. And in 1985, when a woman named Ellen Halloway had gone into labor at Mercy General in Toledo, one of them had signed the paperwork. And 2 years later, when her son had come into an emergency room in Beckham County, the other one had signed the paperwork for that too. The internet had told me one of them was dead. The internet had not bothered to tell me about the other. It was not a conspiracy. It was a family. And families, in places like this, take care of each other. They deliver each other's babies, and they sign each other's death certificates, and they rake the gravel in each other's driveways. Claire. Yeah. Is there an address for Robert P.? Danny. I don't think. Is there an address? A pause. There's a P.O. box in Beckham. That's all that's listed. But, Danny. Wait. I'm going to look at something else. I heard her typing again. Faster. Danny. What? There's a real estate record. In Ohio. Public property. Robert P. Lehman owns a house on Mill Creek Road. In Beckham. It's about 6 miles from where you are. I wrote the address on the back of the death certificate. The pen dug through the paper into my palm. Danny, please, don't go there alone. I'm not going there yet. I'm going somewhere else first. Where? I did not answer, because I did not want her to talk me out of it. I drove back to the Sundowner Inn to get my laptop and my notebook, because I was starting to feel like I needed to write things down. The kind of things you write down so that later, if something has changed, you can prove it. The clerk at the front desk was a different one from the night before. A younger guy, maybe 25, with a neck tattoo of a phrase in a language I couldn't read. He was watching something on his phone and eating a bag of Funyuns. Room 214, I said. Halloway. He looked up. He looked at his computer. He looked back at me. Sir, we don't have a Halloway. I checked in yesterday, paid cash. You've got my ID on file. Sir, I've been on since 6 a.m. and I don't have a Halloway in the system. Then look under something else. Maybe your night guy misspelled it. He clicked around. He frowned. He clicked more. Sir, 2114 is unoccupied. It's been unoccupied since Tuesday. I felt something move in my stomach. A slow, cold sliding. That's not possible. My key is in my pocket. I put the plastic card on the counter. He picked it up, ran it through a reader, and squinted. This key doesn't work. It's a dead card. Look, I have a duffel bag in that room. I have a toothbrush in that bathroom. I slept in that bed 6 hours ago. He held up his hands. Sir, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm telling you what my system says. You want, I can walk up there with you. But if there's stuff in that room, it's not stuff we know about. We walked up together. He had the master key on a lanyard. He knocked. He waited. He opened the door. The room was empty. Not empty like housekeeping had come through. Empty like nobody had been in it. The bed was made with the tight, factory-neat tuck of an unoccupied room. The trash can was lined with a new plastic bag. The bathroom was clean, the little paper strip across the toilet unbroken, and the 2 towels folded on the rack in the shape my grandmother used to call swan style. My duffel bag was not there. My laptop was not there. The 2 sheets of paper I had left on the nightstand, the obituary and the death certificate, were not there. The clerk looked at me with the mild professional pity of a man who has seen a lot of people forget where they are staying. You sure it was this location? There's another Sundowner off 70. I did not answer him. I walked out into the hallway. I stood in front of the door of room 214, and I put my hand on the number, because the plastic 4 was slightly crooked, and I had noticed that last night when I came in, and I had thought, absent-mindedly, I should fix that on my way out. The 4 was still crooked, exactly the same amount, I had slept in that room. I had. I patted my jacket pocket, and the folded printout from the microfilm reader was still there. The copy Marla had helped me make in the library basement. The obituary. It was warm from being against my body. I patted my other pocket. My birth certificate, folded in thirds, was still there, but the original clipping from the storage unit, the one my mother had left in the envelope with my nickname on it, that had been on the nightstand, that was gone. I thanked him. I walked out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat, and I put both hands flat on the wheel, and I made myself breathe in for 4 seconds, and out for 6, the way a therapist had taught me to do when Sarah left, because I was very close to doing something that was not going to help me. I drove out of the Sundowner parking lot, and I drove to the library. Marla was at the front desk. She looked up when the bell rang, and she smiled at me, that small, polite librarian smile, and then the smile faded. "You're back," she said. "Marla, I need to look at the same microfilm as yesterday. Beckham County Register. July 1987. Of course. You know where it is. Sign in first." I signed in. My name went into the visitor log under yesterday's name. I looked at yesterday's line while I signed. It said Daniel Halloway. My handwriting. I remembered writing it. I went downstairs. I threaded the film. I found July 24th, 1987, page 6. The obituary was not there. I checked page 5. I checked page 7. I checked every page of that issue. There was a wedding announcement, a piece about a Little League tournament, a photograph of a woman winning a pie contest at the county fair. There was no obituary for Daniel Wren Halloway. I checked July 23. I checked July 25. I checked the whole month of July. I checked the whole month of August. Nothing. I sat back in the chair, and I felt the bulb ticking under the glass again, and I thought, very clearly, I am losing my mind. Then I remembered the folded printout in my jacket pocket. I took it out. I unfolded it. I set it on the reader glass next to the illuminated page. It said what it had said yesterday. Daniel Wren Halloway, born March 4th, 1985, died July 22nd, 1987, survived by his mother, Ellen Halloway, and his father, Peter Halloway. The header said Beckham County Register, July 24th, 1987, page 6. I looked at the microfilm again. Page 6 of the July 24th, 1987 issue was a full-page ad for a Chevrolet dealership that had gone out of business in 1993. I said, out loud, to no one, "That's not possible." The bulb ticked. I rolled the film forward a week, then back a week, then forward again. My hand was shaking a little on the crank. I passed the same pages 3 or 4 times before I found what I had not been looking for. August 8th, 1987, page 11. A short piece, 3 paragraphs, no photograph. The headline read, "Local family mourns. Loss of infant." The body of the article named a child. It gave a birth date. It gave a date of death. It gave the parents' names. The child was not named Daniel Halloway. The child was named Michael Corley. Born March 4th, 1985. Died July 22nd, 1987. Survived by his mother, Ellen Corley, and his father, Peter Corley. I read it 4 times. Same birthday, same death date, different last name, different first name. But my mother had been born Ellen Marie Byrne, and she had married my father, Peter James Halloway, in 1983. There was no Corley in our family. There had never been. I sat in that basement for a long time. The heat from the reader was on my face. Somewhere upstairs a phone rang, and Marla answered it. I could hear her voice through the ceiling, muffled, cheerful, saying something about a book club. I printed the Corley article. I folded it, and I put it in my jacket pocket next to the Halloway one. I now had 2 printouts of the same event, from the same paper, on different dates, about children with different names, and the same parents. The obituary I had photocopied yesterday was still on the reader glass. I looked at it again. The name at the top now read, Michael Wren Corley. I want to say I gasped, or shouted, or knocked the reader off the desk. I did not. I stared at that piece of paper. I read the name 6 or 7 times. waiting for it to change back. It did not change back. It read Michael Wren Corley, in the same font, the same layout, with my birthday and my parents' first names and, now, a last name that was not mine. I looked at the illuminated page on the reader. The Chevrolet ad was gone. In its place, page 6 of July 24th, 1987, now contained an obituary for Michael Wren Corley. I felt a laugh come up out of my chest, and I killed it before it got out, because I knew if I let it out, I would not be able to stop it. I took the printout off the reader. I folded it very carefully. I put it into my jacket. I turned the reader off. I walked upstairs. Marla was still on the phone. She saw me and she waved. Cheerful. Normal. I waved back. I went out into the parking lot. The sun was doing its dishwater thing again. I got into my car and I sat with the keys in my lap, and I did not start the engine. I took the printout out of my jacket. I unfolded it. I made myself look at the name. Michael Wren Corley. I took my birth certificate out of the other pocket. I unfolded it. I looked at it. Daniel Wren Halloway. Mother, Ellen Marie Halloway. Father, Peter James Halloway. At the bottom, in the certifying physician box, the signature had changed. It no longer said Robert Lehman, MD. It now said Robert P. Lehman, MD. I do not remember driving out of the library parking lot. The next thing I remember is being on Mill Creek Road, a 2-lane county road with cornfields on both sides and one crow standing on a fence post, and the sky doing something I did not like, going soft at the edges, like a photograph that has been left in water. The address Claire had given me was a farmhouse, white, 2 stories, a screened-in front porch, a wraparound driveway, a wooden mailbox with the name Lehman painted on the side in careful black letters. I did not turn into the driveway. I drove past it. I drove another 1/4 mile down the road, pulled onto the shoulder next to a soybean field, and I sat there with the engine idling. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. The screen said, Mom. I let it ring 6 times. On the 7th ring I picked up. Danny. Her voice sounded different than it had yesterday. Slower, farther away. Mom. Danny. Are you sitting down? I'm in the car. Then pull over. I already did. She took a breath. It sounded like it hurt. Danny, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not interrupt me. Can you do that? Yes. Danny, your father and I had a son before you. His name was Michael. We called him Mikey. He was born in 1985 and he died in 1987. And after he died, your father and I, we could not stay in that house. We could not stay in that town. We moved to Toledo, and a year later, we had you. And we named you Daniel because we needed a new name, a new boy, a new everything. Do you understand? I did not answer. Danny, are you there? Mum. Yes, Mum, whose last name was Corley. The line went quiet. Not the quiet of somebody thinking, the quiet of somebody who has just been asked a question in a language she did not know I spoke. Danny, she said, very carefully, what did you just say? Corley, I said. Was your name ever Corley? Was Dad's name ever Corley? Danny, I don't know that name. I don't know any Corleys. What are you talking about? I looked at the printout on the passenger seat. The obituary. Ellen Corley. Peter Corley. Mum, I said, and I could hear my own voice getting thin again. Did we ever live in Beckham County? Before I was born. She said nothing. Mum. She said, Danny, come home. Please, come home right now. I hung up. I put the car in gear. I turned around in the middle of Mill Creek Road, and I drove back to the white farmhouse with the mailbox that said Lehman, and I pulled into the driveway, and I killed the engine. There was a man on the porch. He was sitting in a rocking chair. He was 70-something, thin, wearing a cardigan and reading glasses. He had a book open on his lap. He looked up when I got out of the car, and he closed the book, and he set it on the porch rail. His face did not register surprise. His face did not register anything at all. You must be the second one, he said. The porch smelled like pipe tobacco and old paper. He did not stand up when I climbed the steps. He gestured at a second rocking chair with 2 fingers, the way a man gestures when he has been expecting somebody for a long time. Sit down, son. I did not sit. You're Robert P. Lehman. Bobby. Nobody's called me Robert since my mother died. You signed my birth certificate. He nodded slowly, like a man agreeing that yes, it was a Thursday. I did. You signed my brother's death certificate. I did that too. You knew my parents. I still know one of them, he said. Your mother sends me a Christmas card every year. She doesn't sign her name, but I know her handwriting. I sat down. My knees decided it before my head did. He picked up the book he had set on the rail, closed his finger inside it to hold his place, and set it in his lap again. It was a thin blue hardback, no jacket, and the title on the spine was worn to nothing. I've been retired 16 years, he said. You're not the first person to come up this driveway wanting to talk about something that happened in this county in the 80s. But you're the first one who came up it with your own face. What does that mean? It means you look like him. Like who? He looked at me a long time. There was no cruelty in the look, and there was no kindness in it either. It was the look of a man reading a chart. Like Michael, he said. Your brother. You have his mouth. You didn't when you were smaller. Faces change. I put both printouts on the porch rail. The Holloway obituary. The Corley obituary. He glanced at them without picking them up. Which one is real? I said. They're both real. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have, son. My mother said his name was Michael. His name was Michael. Then why did a paper in this county print an obituary calling him Daniel Holloway? He tapped the arm of his rocking chair with a knuckle. Once. Twice. Because after Michael died, he said, your father did something I have thought about every day for 37 years, and I still don't know what to call it. He went down to the register office on the 23rd of July, and he paid Harold Kessler $40 to run a second notice. Not to replace the first one, to run alongside it, under a different name, with a different family. Why? He said it was so nobody would know where the boy was buried. He said it was so no reporter, no lawyer, no cousin of a cousin could find the grave and dig it up and ask what had happened to it. He said if there were 2 obituaries in 2 different weeks with 2 different families, then anybody looking would give up. Give up looking for what? Bobby Lehman looked out at the soybean field. For a body that shouldn't have been buried the way it was buried, he said. Whoa! There was a long minute where neither of us spoke, and I could hear a tractor somewhere, and a dog barking, and the small rhythmic complaint of his rocking chair. You examined him, I said. I did. Ruth Delano said he had bruises older than the water in his lungs. Ruth Delano is a nurse. She was right about the bruises. She was wrong about the water. There wasn't any water in his lungs. There wasn't any water anywhere on that boy. He didn't drown. Your father brought him in dry. I stared at him. Then why did the certificate say drowning? Because I wrote drowning on it. Why? He set the book down on the porch floor, very gently, next to his shoe. Because your mother was sitting in the hallway outside the exam room, with her wrist in a splint she'd made herself out of a wooden spoon and a dish towel, he said. And she was not crying. She was not moving. She was looking at the wall. And your father was in the room with me, and he was crying so hard I thought he was going to die of it. And he kept saying, she didn't mean to. She didn't mean to. Over and over, like a prayer he had memorized on the way over. I could not swallow. She, I said. Your mother, he said. Yes. I do not know how long I sat on that porch. Long enough for the light to change. Long enough for the crow on the fence post down the road to leave, and for a different crow to take its place. Bobby Lehman did not fill the silence. He was a doctor. He had told people worse things than this in his life, and he understood that after certain sentences, there was no useful thing to add. Eventually I said, tell me the rest. He said, you sure you want it? I said, I drove down here from Toledo. I found her clipping. She left it for me to find. I want it. He nodded. Your mother had what we used to call a nervous condition. That's the polite word. In 1987, we didn't have all the words we have now. She had been in a bad way for a long time before Michael was born, And after he was born, it got worse. And your father loved her more than he loved anything on this earth, including his son, and he thought if he could just get her through it, if he could just hold her together long enough, she would come back. He thought that until the 22nd of July, 1987, and then he could not think it anymore. He paused. He looked at his hands. She did not remember doing it, he said. That was the part your father could not carry. He said she came out of the bathroom holding the boy, and she said, "Peter, something is wrong with Mikey," and she did not know. She truly did not know, and he had to decide, in the 20 minutes it took him to drive to St. Andrews, whether the person he was going to hand to the sheriff was the woman he had promised to spend his life with, or whether he was going to say something else. He said something else. He said drowning, and I wrote it down. And my cousin Harold at the paper printed a notice, and then he printed a second notice a couple weeks later, under a different name because your father was terrified somebody would come asking, and Harold owed my cousin Danforth a favor from an old poker debt, and that was the kind of town it was. And the body. Bobby Lehman looked at me for the first time in several minutes. Your father buried him, he said, in the back 40 of my property, because I had land and I did not have a wife anymore, and I owed Peter Halloway a debt from something else that does not matter to this story. There is a stone out there. It is unmarked. I have mowed around it every summer since 1987. Would you like to see it? We walked out past the barn. It was maybe 200 yards. Bobby moved slowly, and I made myself move at his pace. The grass was cut short. There was a line of maples along the fence, and past the maples there was a low hill, and on top of the hill there was a stone about the size of a loaf of bread. There was no name on it. There was no date. It was a river stone, grey, smoothed by water, long before it had come to this hill. He wanted a name on it, Bobby said. I wouldn't let him. I told him if he put a name on it, somebody would come one day and know. He said, "How will I find him again?" I said, "You know where he is. You'll always know where he is." I knelt down. I put my hand on the stone. It was warm from the sun. I was crying. I had not noticed when it started. He came back, Bobby said, behind me, twice a year, every year until he passed, once in July and once in March. He'd sit right where you're sitting now. He never brought your mother. She never asked to come. I don't think she ever knew this place existed. She left me the clipping, I said. My voice was wet and I didn't care. In the storage unit. She wanted me to find it. I expect she did. Why? He took a while to answer. Son, he said, I have thought about your mother for 37 years. I do not know her mind, but I will tell you what I think. I think she carried a thing for a long time that she could not tell you while your father was alive, because he had promised her he would carry it for her. And after he was gone, she still could not say it out loud. But she is old now, and I think she wanted you to know it before she died, and I think she trusted that you would come find the rest of it yourself, because that is the kind of son she raised. When I came back down the hill, he had made coffee, and there were 2 mugs on the porch rail, and one of them was for me. I need to ask you something else, I said. Ask. I took the copies out of my jacket. The obituary, the one that had, in the basement of the library that morning, changed its name in front of me. The birth certificate, the one whose signature had grown a middle initial, while I sat in a motel parking lot. I laid them on the rail next to the coffee. When I photocopied this yesterday, I said, it said Halloway. This morning at the library, on the microfilm, that same obituary said Corley. On this printout, it said Corley. Now, I unfolded it. The name at the top read Michael Wren Corley. And this, I said. I unfolded the birth certificate. The doctor's signature at the bottom said Robert Lehman when I found it in the storage unit. This morning it said Robert P. Lehman, with a middle initial. Which is you? He looked at both pieces of paper. He looked at them for a long time. He picked up the birth certificate. He tilted it toward the light. He set it back down. Then he said something I did not expect. He said, "May I show you something?" He went inside the house. He came back out with a wooden cigar box. He set it on the porch rail next to my papers. He opened it. Inside was a small stack of newspaper clippings, maybe 20 of them. They were yellow and brittle, and they were all the same size, and they were all obituaries. He fanned them out on the rail like a hand of cards. Every single one of them was for a child. Every single one of them had the same birthday, March 4th, 1985. Every single one of them had the same date of death, July 22, 1987. The names were all different. Michael Corley, Daniel Halloway, Thomas Ashford, Kevin Bright, Peter Halloway Jr., Michael Ellery, Daniel Byrne. Names I did not know. Names that were pieces of names I did know. My mother's maiden name, my father's first name, my middle name, over and over. Where did these come from, I said. Every year, Bobby said, on the 22nd of July, I go down to the mailbox, and there is one of these in it, in the same handwriting. There is no return address, there is no envelope. It is folded once, and it is placed inside the mailbox, and the flag has not been raised. Sometimes there is dew on it, sometimes there is not. How long has this been happening? Since 1988. The first one showed up a year to the day after your brother died. I thought it was a prank. The second year another one came. Different name. Same child. That is when I started keeping them. Who is leaving them? He looked at me. Son, he said, I have watched that mailbox from this porch on the 22nd of July every year for 37 years. I have sat in this chair from sunup to sundown. I have never seen anybody come down that road. Not on foot. Not in a car. Nothing. And the paper is always in the box by dark. I could not look away from the clippings. Are these real newspapers? I said. They are all Beckham County Register, he said. The typeface is right. The paper is right. My cousin Harold ran the Register until 1994, and I know how his layouts looked. These are his layouts. But he did not print them. He would have told me. And after he died, they kept coming. I picked one up. It was for a boy named Michael Corley. The paper was soft with age. It felt exactly like the printout in my hand, and exactly not like it, in the way that old paper feels different from new paper. May I take one? I said. You may take any of them you want. They are your family, not mine. I took the Michael Corley one. I folded it carefully into the inside pocket of my jacket, where my wallet was, because that pocket had a button. I drove back to Toledo that night. It was a 3-hour drive and I did it in 4, because I stopped twice. Once to be sick on the shoulder of I-71, and once at a rest area, to sit at a picnic table and look at the sky and try to remember who I was. I got to my mother's house a little before 11. The porch light was on. Her Toyota was in the driveway. The kitchen window was lit yellow. She was sitting at the kitchen table. She had her hands folded in front of her. There were 2 cups of tea on the table. One was for me. She had known when I would come. She was 71 years old. She had gone grey in her 50s, and she had not colored it, because she had said she was tired of pretending. Her wrist, the left one, had a small kink in it, where a bone had once been broken and never quite set right. I had asked her about the kink when I was maybe 8 years old, and she had told me she had fallen off a bicycle when she was young, and I had believed her, because when your mother tells you a thing, you believe her. I sat down. I did not touch the tea. Bobby Lehman said hello, I said. She closed her eyes. She kept them closed for a while. How is he? Old, same as you. Did he show you the hill? Yes. Was there grass? Yes. She opened her eyes. They were wet. She did not wipe them. I could not go there, Danny. I want you to know that. Not because I did not want to, because your father would not let me. He said the day he told me was the day he lost me, and he could not lose me twice. So he kept it. He kept it for both of us. And when he died, I sat in his hospital room in Zanesville, and I told him I was sorry, and I promised him I would tell you before I was gone, and I couldn't. Every year I couldn't. Until I put the envelope in the box, and even then I couldn't say the word out loud. You don't remember doing it. She looked at me for a long time. I have never remembered it, she said. I have believed it. That is different. I have believed your father, because your father did not lie to me, ever, in 40 years. But I do not remember it, Danny. I remember July 22nd, 1987, and I remember waking up on the bathroom floor with my wrist bent the wrong way, and I remember your father screaming at me to get up, and I remember the drive to St. Andrews, and I remember the hallway. I do not remember the bathroom before. I do not remember picking Mikey up. I do not remember any of it, and I have spent 37 years being afraid that I did not remember, because I could not bear it, and being more afraid that I did not remember, because it did not happen the way your father said it happened. I sat very still. Mum, yes. And what do you mean, it didn't happen the way he said it happened? She reached across the table, and she took my hand. Her fingers were very cold. Danny, she said, your father was alone in the house with Mikey for 2 hours before I woke up on that floor. I do not know what happened in those 2 hours. I have never known, and I let him tell me a story about it, because if I did not let him tell me the story, I did not know how to keep being alive. Ooh! I do not know how long we sat there. The kitchen clock said something, and then something else, and then something else. She made fresh tea at some point. I drank it. It tasted like nothing. Around 2 in the morning she went to bed. She kissed my forehead. She said, there is a box in the attic, behind the Christmas tree. It has his things. When you can, look at it. Not tonight. I said I would. I did not sleep. I sat on her couch and I watched the light change in the front window. Around 5 I got up and I went into the attic anyway, because there is a thing about being told not to do something tonight that makes tonight the only time you can do it. The box was where she said, cardboard, no label. Inside were baby clothes, a small pair of shoes, a rattle, a stuffed rabbit with one ear chewed short, and a photograph, one photograph, a woman I recognized as my mother, 30 years younger, sitting in an armchair. In her lap, a boy of maybe 2, dark hair, my mouth. Bobby Lehman had been right about that. I turned the photograph over. On the back, in my father's handwriting, it said Mikey, Easter 1987. I put the photograph in my jacket pocket, next to the newspaper clipping from Bobby's cigar box, and I sat down on the attic floor. It has been 11 months. My mother is still alive. We talk on the phone twice a week. We do not talk about Michael. We have said what we had to say. She is not going to remember what she does not remember, and I am not going to make her. Claire and I drove down to Bobby Lemon's farm once in October to see the stone. Claire brought a bunch of small white flowers from a florist off the highway. She put them on the grass next to the stone. She said, "Hi, Mikey." I could not say anything. That was all right. She said enough for both of us. Bobby died in March. His daughter called me from Cincinnati to tell me. She said her father had left instructions that a certain wooden cigar box was to be mailed to me. She said the instructions were very specific about it. I told her thank you. I told her Bobby had been kind to my family. The box arrived on a Tuesday. I opened it at the kitchen table. Inside were the clippings. All of them, or nearly all. I counted. 36. One for every year from 1988 to 2023. Different names. Same child. Underneath the clippings, in the bottom of the box, was a folded piece of newsprint I had not seen before. It was newer than the others. The paper was still white. There was no yellowing at all. I unfolded it. It was another obituary. Same layout, same typeface, same birth date, and same death date. The name at the top was Michael Wren Halloway. Beneath the name, in the 91 words of a small-town paper's shortest kind of notice, the survivors were listed. Survived by his mother, Ellen Halloway, and his brother, Daniel Halloway. I stared at it for a long time. My father, Peter Halloway, had died in a Cracker Barrel parking lot in 2011. He had been gone for 13 years. There was no version of the world in which he was omitted from a survivors list because he was still living. There was only the version in which he was omitted because he was not. I looked at the date at the top of the clipping. The date at the top of the clipping was July 22, 2024. I checked my calendar. It was March 19. It was 2024. July 22 had not happened yet. I folded the paper. I put it back in the box. I closed the box. I have not opened it since. But I will tell you this, and I will only tell you this once, because I have thought about it every day for 4 months, and I have not made it mean anything, and I do not think I will. On the 22nd of July this year, I sat in my kitchen from sun-up to sundown. I did not go outside. I did not open the mail. I did not open the box. At 6 in the evening, the doorbell rang. I went to the door. There was no one there. On the welcome mat, there was a folded piece of newsprint. There was dew on it, and it had not rained. That concludes tonight's file. If you've ever experienced something strange or unexplained, I'd love to hear your story. You can share it in the comments, or send it to the email in the description. It might become a future case on Midnight Files. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, subscribe and join me for more documentary-style horror stories. Until next time, stay curious. And remember, sometimes the things we can't explain are the ones we never forget.